Have you ever noticed that what once protected you can eventually become the very thing holding you back? I've been thinking about that a lot lately. In fact, I wrote something recently that surprised even me. In a recent blog post, I wrote, "My cage became my couch." Not my couch became my cage, but my cage became my couch. For me, that cage wasn't one thing. It was a collection of things that kept me sedentary. I was hyper independent, believing I always had to figure everything out myself. I was always busy. I saw that as being productive. I was convincing myself that if I worked a little harder, if I healed a little bit more, if I learned a little more, I'd eventually feel ready to get off the couch. But at some point I realized I wasn't preparing for life anymore. I was postponing it. The cage door had been open for a long time. I just hadn't walked through it. And the more I sat with it, my cage became my couch. The more I realized how true that statement is for so many of us. When we're hurt, we build protections. We establish routines. We create walls. We become independent, careful, responsible. And for a while, those things serve us. They help us heal. They help us survive. But what happens when survival becomes a lifestyle? What happens when the thing that once protected you becomes so familiar that you stop questioning its relevance? That's what I think this Capricorn Full Moon is trying to show us. Not what's broken, not that we're doing life wrong, but some of us are still living inside structures we no longer need. And that's hard to see because those structures often feel safe. I think about people who tell me they're stuck. They want something different than what they have. A new relationship, a new career, some creative project, a healthier body, more peace, more joy, more balance. But when we start digging deeper, we often find that there is not a lack of desire. It's protection holding them back. They're protecting themselves from disappointment, from failure, from rejection. They're protecting themselves from being seen. I get it because I've done all that myself. And if I'm being honest, I'll probably do that again. It's just that sometimes we become so focused on avoiding pain that we accidentally start avoiding growth. And then one day we wake up and realize that our couch became our cage. We're comfortable there. We're familiar there, safe there. But we're no longer growing there. And that's where this full moon comes in. Capricorn has a reputation, right? Its energy is ambitious, hardworking, but I don't think that's the real lesson right now. I think the real lesson is honesty. What am I building and why? In a recent blog post, I wrote that balance isn't calm, it's honesty. So ask yourself, am I building a life that reflects who I'm becoming? Or am I still organizing my life around who I had to become to survive? Those are two very different things. I think that's why so many people are feeling tired right now. They're not lazy, they're not failing, they're not unmotivated, but because maintaining a life that you've already outgrown requires an incredible amount of energy. You can feel it. You can feel when something no longer fits. You can feel when you're carrying expectations that you've outgrown. You can feel when you're chasing goals that don't actually belong to you anymore. And maybe that's the invitation of this full moon, right? Not to do more, not to achieve more, not to fix yourself. That's why I think this Capricorn moon is such an important teacher right now. Capricorn doesn't care what sounds good. It doesn't care what looks good. Capricorn cares about what you're actually building. What you say you value doesn't matter nearly as much as what your daily choices reveal. What you hope to create someday may not be what you're actually building today. What you're creating is revealed through your habits, your routines, your actions. What matters is this. What are your choices building right now? What are your habits building right now? What are your daily actions building? Eventually, our lives reveal what we've been committed to all along through choice, habit, and action. Become honest enough to ask yourself, if nobody applauded, would I still want this? If nobody approved, would I still choose this? If no one was watching, would I still be building this life? Because awareness changes everything. But eventually awareness asks something of us. Participation. We got to get off the couch. Eventually we have to live what we've learned. And perhaps that's what this full moon is really illuminating. Not what needs to be destroyed, not what needs to be fixed, but what deserves to come with us into the next chapter. Not everything that carried us here is meant to carry us forward. Be honest. What can you set down? And what might become possible if you finally did?